Welcome to Tombstone, Arizona, where the past doesn't rest and the dead don't stay silent. In the Birdcage Theater, history bleeds into horror, and one woman, Clara, unlocked a debt that won't let her go. Before we dive into this chilling tale, hit that subscribe button, smash the like, drop a comment with your own ghost stories, and share this video to spread the fear. Ready to step into the shadows of Tombstone? Let's go. The sun bled orange over Tombstone, Arizona, as Clara stepped off the evening bus, her boots crunching on the gravel of Allen Street. The air was heavy, thick with the scent of dust and something metallic, like old blood baked into the earth. She'd come to research the OK Corral for her thesis, drawn to the town's violent past, but the way the locals avoided her gaze at the diner made her skin prickle. "Don't linger at the birdcage after dark," an old woman muttered, her eyes darting to the saloon across the street. Clara laughed it off. Ghost stories were just tourist bait. The Birdcage Theater loomed at the edge of town, its weathered facade sagging like a skull left too long in the desert. By 9 p.m., the last tour had ended, but Clara had bribed the guide for after-hours access. The door creaked as she stepped inside, her flashlight cutting through the gloom. The air was stale, heavy with the faint tang of whiskey and cigar smoke, though no one had smoked here in a century. Velvet curtains hung in tatters, and the stage where showgirls once danced was coated in dust. Her footsteps echoed too loudly, as if the building resented her presence. She set up her recorder near the poker tables where bullet holes still scarred the wood from drunken shootouts in the 1880s. "Just getting ambiance," she whispered half to herself as she scanned the room. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the faint hum of her device. Then a clink, like a glass hitting a table. She froze. Her flashlight swept the room, catching only shadows. "Hello." Her voice sounded small, swallowed by the dark. The temperature plummeted. Her breath clouded in front of her, though it was August. The recorder hissed, then spat out a low, guttural chuckle that wasn't hers. She grabbed it, fumbling, and played it back. Beneath the static, a voice rasped, "Get out." Her heart slammed against her ribs. She turned to leave, but the door was gone. Just a blank wall where it had been. Panic clawed at her throat as she spun around, her flashlight flickering. Faces stared back from the darkness. Not reflections, not shadows. Faces. Pale, hollow-eyed men in tattered coats, their mouths twisted into snarls. A woman in a crimson dress, her throat slashed, swayed near the stage, her eyes locked on Clara. The smell of gunpowder stung the air. Clara stumbled back, tripping over a chair as the figures moved closer, their boots scraping the floor. A cold hand grazed her arm, and she screamed, the sound drowned by a sudden, deafening gunshot. She scrambled to her feet, heart pounding, and ran toward the stage, where a trapdoor gaped like a hungry mouth. She didn't think, just dropped through it, landing hard in a damp, earthen tunnel. The walls pulsed with a faint red glow, and whispers slithered around her. Names she recognized from history books: Wyatt, Doc, Clanton. The tunnel stretched endlessly, the air growing thicker, hotter, until it felt like she was choking on ash. Her flashlight died, and in the dark, something heavy dragged itself closer, a wet, scraping sound, like a body crawling through mud. Clara ran blindly, her hands scraping rough walls, until she slammed into a wooden door. It burst open, spilling her back into the birdcage's main room. The faces were gone, the air warm again, but her recorder was still running, now filled with hours of voices, shouts, screams, laughter that hadn't been there before. She stumbled outside, the door real again, and collapsed in the street as dawn broke over Tombstone. The locals found her there, muttering about faces and tunnels. They didn't ask questions, just drove her to the bus station. As the bus pulled away, Clara looked back. The birdcage stood silent, but in its window, a shadow moved. A man in a long coat, tipping his hat. She deleted the recording without listening again. Some histories, she decided, were better left buried. Clara's hands trembled as the bus rumbled away from Tombstone, the desert stretching endlessly beyond the smudged window. Her backpack sat heavy in her lap, the weight of her notebook and the now silent recorder grounding her against the memory of those faces in the birdcage. She tried to focus on the hum of the engine, the chatter of other passengers, but but her mind kept dragging her back to the tunnel. The red glow, the dragging sound, the whispers that knew her name. She hadn't told anyone in that place her name. By the time she reached Tucson, the morning sun was harsh, bleaching the world of shadows. She checked into a cheap motel, the kind with flickering neon signs and stains on the carpet, hoping sleep would dull the edges of the night. But as she lay on the creaking bed, the air conditioner rattling like bones, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand, an unknown number. She ignored it, but a voicemail appeared anyway. Her finger hovered over the play button, dread pooling in her gut. When she finally pressed it, static crackled, followed by a voice, low and deliberate. "You shouldn't have run, Clara." She dropped the phone, her breath catching. The voice was the same as the one on the recorder, the same rasp like gravel and smoke. She checked the call log, but the number was just a string of zeros. She yanked the curtain shut as if that could keep Tombstone out. Sleep never came. Instead, she pored over her notes, scribbling what she remembered. The faces, the woman in red, the tunnel that shouldn't exist. Online searches for the birdcage pulled up tourist reviews and ghost hunting blogs, but nothing about a tunnel or voices that knew your name. One forum post, buried deep, mentioned a miner in the 1880s who vanished beneath the theater, his body never found. The locals called it the Devil's Cellar. By noon, she couldn't stay still. She needed answers. Against every instinct, Clara rented a car and drove back to Tombstone. The town felt different in daylight. Too quiet, the streets nearly empty, as if the residents knew something she didn't. She parked near the birdcage, its weathered sign swaying in the hot wind. The same guide from last night, a grizzled man named Roy, was locking up. "Back already?" he said, squinting. "Thought you'd seen enough." "I need to go inside again," Clara said, her voice steadier than she felt. Roy's face hardened, but he didn't ask why. He just unlocked the door and stepped aside, muttering, "Don't say I didn't warn you." The theater was unchanged, dusty, dim, the air thick with that same whiskey and smoke scent. Clara ignored the stage and headed straight for the trapdoor. It was still there, half hidden under a rug she hadn't noticed before. She pried it open, revealing a rough-hewn staircase descending into darkness. Her flashlight beam trembled as it caught cobwebs and jagged rock walls. She shouldn't go down. She knew it, but the voicemail echoed in her head, and she needed to know why they wanted her. The tunnel was colder than she remembered, the red glow fainter but still pulsing like a heartbeat in the stone. Her footsteps echoed and the whispers returned, sharper now. "Clara, stay, ours." She gripped her flashlight like a weapon, her pulse hammering. The tunnel twisted, leading deeper than any mine should beneath a saloon. Then she saw it, a door, not wooden like before, but iron, rusted and etched with symbols she couldn't read. They pulsed in time with the glow. She reached for the handle, but the air shifted, heavy with the stench of gunpowder and rot. Behind her, the dragging sound returned, closer, wetter, like flesh tearing across stone. She spun, her flashlight catching a glimpse of something, tall, hunched, its face a blur of bone and shadow. It wasn't human, not anymore. Clara screamed, bolting for the door, but her foot caught on a loose rock. She fell, her flashlight skittering away, its beam landing on a pile of bones in the corner. Human, old, some still wrapped in scraps of cloth. The thing was closer now, its breath a low rasp, the same voice from the voicemail. "You saw," it hissed. "Now you stay." Clara scrambled to her feet, yanking at the iron door. It gave way with a groan, and she stumbled through, slamming it shut. The sound stopped, but the air grew hotter, the walls tightening around her. She was in a chamber now, the red glow blinding, and at its center stood the woman in the crimson dress, her slashed throat dripping black. Around her, the pale men from the theater circled, their eyes empty but fixed on Clara. "You opened it," the woman said, her voice echoing inside Clara's skull. "The debt must be paid." Clara didn't wait to ask what debt. She ran, her legs burning, through another tunnel that seemed to stretch forever. The whispers chased her, names and screams blending into a cacophony. Finally, she burst into daylight, collapsing in an alley behind the birdcage. The trapdoor was gone when she looked back, just a blank floorboard. Roy was there, his face pale. "Told you not to linger," he said, but his voice shook. Clara left Tombstone that day, never looking back. She burned her notes smashed the recorder, and moved across the country, far from deserts and ghost towns. But at night, when the world was quiet, she'd hear it, a faint rasp, a drag in the dark, and her name whispered from somewhere too close. Tombstone hadn't let her go. Clara settled in a small apartment in Portland, Maine, as far from Tombstone's dust as she could get. The ocean's salt air and gray skies felt like a shield, a world away from the desert's heat and whispers. She found a job at a bookstore, shelving novels and avoiding history sections, anything that might remind her of the bird cage. She told herself it was over. Bad dreams, stress, nothing more. But her sleep was fractured, haunted by flashes of the iron door, the woman in red, and that dragging sound, always closer. Her new life felt like a thin veneer over something waiting to crack. 3 months later, it did. She was closing the bookstore late, the only one left, when the lights flickered. The air turned cold, sharp with the tang of gunpowder. She froze, her hands clutching a stack of paperbacks. The shop's silence broke with a faint clink, like a glass hitting a table, just like that night in Tombstone. Her heart lurched. She scanned the aisles, but the shadows were too deep, pooling in corners where the overhead lights didn't reach. Not real, she whispered, gripping the counter. Then her phone buzzed in her pocket. Another voicemail, same string of zeros. She didn't play it. She couldn't. Instead, she grabbed her keys and bolted for the door, but the lock wouldn't turn. The glass rattled as she yanked harder, and in its reflection she saw them, pale faces, hollow-eyed, pressed against the inside of the window. The men from the birdcage, their coats tattered, their mouths moving without sound. Behind them, the woman in red stood motionless, her slashed throat glistening. Clara stumbled back, knocking over a display. The books hit the floor, pages splaying open, and she swore she saw words bleeding into the paper, forming her name in jagged, inky scrawls. She ran to the back room, slamming the door, her breath ragged. The dragging sound started again, slow and deliberate, coming from the other side. Something heavy scraped against the wood and the doorknob rattled. "You opened it, Clara," the woman's voice rasped, not from the door, but inside her head. "The debt follows." Clara pressed her hands to her ears, but the voice burrowed deeper, joined by others. Wyatt, Doc, Clanton, chanting names, dates, debts unpaid. Her vision blurred, and for a moment she was back in the tunnel, the red glow pulsing, the iron door looming. She snapped back to the bookstore when the door splintered. No time to think. She grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall and swung it at the window in the back room. Glass shattered and she climbed through, cutting her palms on the shards. The cold Maine night hit her like a slap as she ran down the alley, not daring to look back. Streetlights flickered as she passed, and every shadow seemed to move, stretching toward her with skeletal fingers. She didn't stop until she reached her apartment, locking the door and shoving a dresser against it. Her phone was still in her pocket, buzzing relentlessly with new voicemails. She powered it off, but the screen flickered back on, the zeros glaring. The air grew heavy, the gunpowder stench creeping in despite the locked windows. Clara sank to the floor, clutching her knees, and noticed something new, a faint red glow under the closet door. She didn't want to look, but her hand moved anyway, as if pulled. The closet creaked open, revealing not coats or boxes, but a rough-hewn staircase descending into darkness, just like the one beneath the birdcage. The red glow pulsed below, and the dragging sound echoed up closer now, wet and deliberate. Footsteps followed, not human, too uneven, too heavy. Clara slammed the closet shut, but the glow seeped through the cracks, and the whispers returned, louder, angrier. "You can't run. You owe." She didn't know what the debt was, but she felt it now, a weight in her chest, like she'd stolen something from that tunnel, and it wanted it back. Desperate, she grabbed a kitchen knife and carved a line across her palm, blood welling up. "Take it," she whispered, smearing the blood on the closet door. The glow flared, then dimmed, and the dragging stopped. Silence fell, heavy but fragile. Clara didn't sleep. She sat against the wall, knife in hand, watching the closet. By morning, the staircase was gone, the closet just a closet again. But her palm throbbed, the cut deeper than it should be, and when she washed it, the water stung like whiskey. She moved again to a new city, a new name. name, but she knew it wouldn't matter. The birdcage wasn't just a place. It was a debt, and it had her scent. Every night she checked her closet, her phone, her reflection, waiting for the glow, the rasp, the drag. Tombstone wasn't done with her, and deep down, she knew it never would be. Clara changed her name to Sarah and moved to Asheville, North Carolina, chasing the safety of green mountains and crowded tourist streets. She rented a one-room cabin on the edge of town, surrounded by pines that whispered in the wind, a sound she told herself was nothing like the voices from Tombstone. She got a job as a barista, blending into the hum of normalcy, pouring coffee, smiling at strangers, pretending the past was a bad dream. But her hands shook when the shop's lights flickered, and she kept a knife taped under her nightstand. The scar on her palm from that night in Portland never quite healed. It itched when she was alone, like a reminder of something unpaid. 6 months passed, and she started to believe she'd outrun it. Then, on a rainy April night, the cafe's radio cut to static mid-song, spitting out a low chuckle that froze her mid-pour. The other barista didn't notice, but Clara's blood ran cold. She mopped up the spilled coffee, her eyes darting to the windows. Outside, the street was empty, but the rain seemed to fall slower, heavier, like it was watching her. When her shift ended, she hurried home, the scar on her palm burning. In the cabin, the air felt wrong, too still, laced with that faint gunpowder tang. She checked the locks, the windows, the closet. Nothing. But as she lit a candle to calm her nerves, the flame flared red, not orange, and the shadows on the walls twisted into shapes, tall figures in long coats, a woman with a slashed throat. Clara dropped the candle. The flame snuffed out before it hit the floor. Her phone buzzed on the counter, the screen lighting up with zeros. She didn't touch it. Instead, she grabbed the knife from under her nightstand and backed toward the door. The floorboards creaked behind her, though she lived alone. She spun, knife raised, but saw only her reflection in the darkened window. Except it wasn't right. Her reflection's eyes were hollow, her mouth curled into a smile she wasn't making. The scar on her palm throbbed, and blood trickled from it, unprovoked, pooling on the floor. The reflection stepped closer, though Clara didn't move, and whispered, "You can't pay with blood forever." The cabin's walls groaned, and the red glow seeped from the floorboards, curling like smoke. The dragging sound returned, louder, wetter, coming from below the cabin. Clara bolted outside, rain soaking her as she ran through the pines, her flashlight beam cutting through the dark. The trees seemed to lean in, branches snagging her hair, and the whispers followed. Not just names now, but fragments of her life. Her childhood dog's name, her mother's laugh, secrets she'd never told. The forest wasn't a forest anymore. It was the tunnel, its walls pulsing red, the iron door looming ahead. Tombstone, Arizona still stands, waiting. The birdcage never forgets its visitors. Will you dare to step inside?